Hello and welcome to The Signal, Workplace NL's Health and Safety Podcast. Workplace NL is the Workers' Compensation Board in Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. The focus is to promote safe and healthy workplaces, provide return-to-work programs, and offer compensation to injured workers and their dependents. This series of podcasts will provide you with the latest information on how workplaces can protect the health and safety of workers. Please enjoy the show.
Good day, everyone. My name is Cheryl Osborne, Health and Safety Advisor here at Workplace NL in the Prevention Services Department. With me today is someone who's very well known in Newfoundland and Labrador in the field of health and wellness, Dr. Mike Wahl. You've probably listened to Dr. Mike Wahl on the Health and Wellness Show on VOCM or watched his TV show on NTV. A health and wellness entrepreneur, university professor at Memorial University's Faculty of Medicine, radio host, and international speaker, Dr. Mike Wahl is passionate about bringing tangible health results to the masses. Welcome, Dr. Wahl.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for your interest in joining us here today for this episode.
It's always good to talk to a fellow kinesiologist about things like stretching.
I love it. I love it. I wish I had all day to talk to you. So today we're going to be talking about the importance of preparing our bodies for the physical demands of the workday ahead, and I'm hoping that you can share some real practical and tangible advice for our listeners. So Dr. Wahl, if a worker performs physically demanding work on the job, but doesn't prime their body for the physical movements and postures required of them to complete their work, then are they at a greater risk of developing a musculoskeletal injury?
Yeah, I would say yes, because in my experience, for a bit of background, people listening, when I had a business, one of the things we used to do was go work with these industrial populations, in particular safety sensitive type jobs. And when you take a person that's using their body as part of their work on a day-to-day basis, they can get really tight, strong muscles, which can, become more prone to being injured. But then also you've got the opposite side of the spectrum where people sit at desks all day long and they're in these static postures as well. So our bodies really aren't made to go from nothing to full-on movement. And so one of the things we can look at is how do you physically prepare workers to wake up those muscles, to increase the blood flow, to get them out of their sleepy state if they're rolling out of bed and going directly to work. And warm-ups and stretching does make a difference. And we've been able to show that with companies where we actually had a measurable change in their safety performance as a result of it.
I just wanted to add, too, that with the employers that I've had experience working with, they've passed along, how it's great team building activities, and people can go and physically warm up their body while they're having a little chat with their coworkers before they start their shift. And there's a lot of communication that can be done during that, 4, 5, 6 minute time frame where they're preparing for the rest of their day, the activities ahead, just planning in the healthcare industry. What I have heard is that, when they do their little safety huddles, and they can do some warm-ups as well during the safety huddles, in regards to client handling, situations where there may be a particular client that's challenging and there's new staff on, well, having a little safety huddle at the beginning of their shift so that they can brainstorm, share best practices, what's working for another health care provider that maybe one of the newer ones can learn from. So there's a lot of really positive things that can come out of group huddles.
Yeah, one of the places I used to go to was an FPSO offshore. They would play like Thunderstruck and different music to make it fun for them. And I also remember one time I went offshore and certain people have challenges with different tasks, things like hitting alternate knee to elbow, which seems basic for some people. Some people's brains just don't work that way. And I remember this guy met me when I got off the chopper saying, "I can't wait for stretches. I learned how to do it finally." He didn't know I was there to change the stretches, so I didn't have the heart to do it. So we did the stretches, and everybody was really proud of this guy for being coordinated enough to do it. And that was fun, and that was something that added a lot to it. But, when we talk about how it can be implemented, I think that people need to prioritize it because it is actually an effective tool, just like safety glasses, just like hard hats. And whether people like it or not, there's a value to it that protects them, and that's the responsibility of employers, is to protect their people.
Absolutely. So we know that they are effective for workers who do physically demanding work. And would that be the case now as well for other types of occupations and jobs where, So in some cases we have workers who are sedentary. Their work just involves them doing a lot of static sitting or even static standing, where there's just low energy expenditure. But then we have another mix of workers, of course, where there's a range. They sit for a period of time, and then they might do some physical activities infrequently throughout their day. I think about in the transportation industry there. So our truckers or our delivery drivers, where they're sitting for a period of time and then they might have to get out and do some manual handling activities. So would it be important for them? And, people who just have not necessarily a lot of physical work or any very heavy, strenuous work, but what about the ones who are somewhere in the middle? Their work is very dynamic, active, they're on the go a lot, their body is required to go into different positions a lot, but not necessarily that they have to lift those heavy loads or do a lot of manual handling activities.
Yeah, and I think that people forget that stretching isn't just about prepping the body for physical tasks. It also helps with cognitive efficiency as well. And, you ever pick up a sleeping cat, you realize that that the muscles in that cat are relaxed. Well, when we're sitting up straight, we're actually having a tonic contraction of all of our muscles in our body. And this low-grade contraction that allows us to sit up at a desk and type all day long and hold these postures, they're all contractions, and those contractions can reduce blood flow to different tissues. So if somebody is doing sedentary activity, they need to get up and stretch those shortened muscles. Think about your hips. Your hips are in a bent position, your knees are in a bent position. And then at the end of the day, you go home and lay in bed and your legs are restless all night long. You're like, why are they restless? Well, if you know anatomy, you know the IT band has been shortened all day long, and now you're finally stretching your body out while you're sleeping. Your legs can't relax. So stretching for sedentary to combat these which are really not natural postures. We're called Homo erectus, not Homo sit down all day long. And so, we're combating that. We're doing these low-grade tonic contractions. If you're sedentary, if you're physically demanding, we already talked about the need to warm up those muscles. And if you're changing between somewhat physical, somewhat sedentary, well, you need to get that body warmed up, just like an Indy car would swerve on the track to warm up their tires before they start the race. And so, no matter who you are, it's beneficial. And I think that the other thing that comes in is how we do it isn't as important as we may think. And we're probably going to talk a little bit about what stretching is. But in general, getting moving and doing something that's going to be safe and not harm somebody is the real key. But you don't have to take it to the same level of training or specificity you'd need with a pro athlete.
Okay. I'm really glad you said that, because you read a lot or you hear a lot that it's recommended that a program be tailored for this particular occupation or this particular type of work. So an experienced professional should be consulted, like maybe a physiotherapist or a kinesiologist or athletic therapist, to build that customized physical warm-up program. But the reality is that many employers aren't doing that. There's many smaller employers in Newfoundland and Labrador, and they probably just don't have that financial means to bring in an external professional. So my question to you was going to be, how much of a priority would you place on that, and isn't doing something better than nothing at all?
Well, I would argue it costs a heck of a lot more to hurt somebody. And so you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars for a disability claim in a small company. That individual, this part of your smaller team, has a greater role, more important and operational. And the people that are more prone to injuries tend to be your older, more experienced people that hold the knowledge. And so I don't think that there is a cost savings by not doing something. The first. Number two is that it doesn't take a lot, but you do need to have somebody who understands the body and is doing it safely. One thing about wellness is it's not regulated. So obviously I've gone to school for over 20 years. Yourself, you're a kinesiologist. Your husband's a kinesiologist, in the world of being trained specifically for this. And so when you look at expertise, it is really important you're doing the right thing. And first of all, understanding how to stretch effectively is really important. When the military first started doing stretching, they did the wrong things. They had the right idea, but they learned over time what's right and what's wrong. The second thing is individuals are all different. And so you have to have somebody who has a skill set to be able to say, oh, you've had a herniated disc in your lower back. You should not be doing these activities. Oh, you have carpal tunnel. You shouldn't be doing this type of stretch. So then having this generic overall approach, but then having those individuals that need the special assistance to be able to participate by customizing it for them so that they're doing the right thing, I think that is an important skill set to have. So it's a relatively minimal investment when it can be integrated into your current health and safety approaches. But it's definitely worth the money to seek out somebody who's got experience with it, understands the demands of it, and also understands who your audience is. A lot of people don't understand the demands of specific jobs. They may have never been to a crab plant before. They may have never been to a hospital and seen what nurses do on a day-to-day basis. And so understanding the environment, understanding the theory, and then spending a minimal amount of time to properly educate people are all critical components, but that doesn't actually cost that much.
Okay. So if someone was to start right now and they don't have the professional, they don't have that support right now, where would you suggest that they go, or what do you suggest that they could start immediately in the workplace until they're able to get the professional support that's needed? Mm-hmm. For example, where I'm going with this is just functional movement activities. So if the job requires manual handling, for example, there's some lifting or pushing or carrying, pulling, those types of activities, would you recommend that at a minimum before their workers begin their shift, that they be taking their body through basically mimicking some of the activities that they would have to do on the job, but before they have the external loads and stresses placed on their body? So before they lift the loads, let's actually walk our body through some of those movement patterns that need to be done on the job. Is that somewhere, is that something that you would be recommending, that
I think
at least
so.
as a starting place?
I think so, yeah. And I think there's two things we have to look at. People have heard about static stretching and they've heard about dynamic stretching. And there's a lot of information out there saying that static stretching, where you hold a stretch, touch your toes or something like that, isn't good for us. You have to realize those first studies that were done were stretching people for an hour. Okay, so they weren't indicative of a 10, 15 second stretch for somebody. If somebody's doing a static stretch for 10 or 15 seconds, that's not going to fatigue the body to the same degree that these studies did initially. So static stretching got a bit of a bad rap. So if you're doing a short duration static stretching, that's good. The other type of stretching is called dynamic stretching. And dynamic stretching is when you are mimicking those movements. You're bending over, you're twisting at the waist, you're moving your wrists in a circle, or standing on one leg and doing the hokey pokey with your foot. That's dynamic movement. And what the goal of short duration static stretching or dynamic movements is to do is to not increase the individual's flexibility. Okay, so they're not making that person more flexible. The only way to get more flexible is to be Jean-Claude Van Damme between two chairs and stretch for 20 minutes in the splits, or you do flexibility training like gymnasts do, where you do long duration. That's not the goal of a pre-shift warm-up. A pre-shift warm-up should be that I want to make you and me and all my coworkers as warmed up as we can be in our current range of motion. So we're not trying to increase it. We're just trying to make you as good as you can through your full range, because that's the range you're going to work in. So if I'm doing I would start, first of all, with my warm-up right from the top of the head right down to the feet. So I start off with the neck side to side, head, ear to shoulder, little movements to get the neck moving. Not trying to be the exorcist and turn my head all the way around, just small, easy movements that stay within a comfortable range of motion. Then I move to the shoulders, do some shoulder circles, arm circles, then do some arms and do some arm swings. Move down to the waist and do some simple torso rotations where I'm going side to side. And then go to the legs and do some squats. Maybe do some toe touches, but like towards the toes, not necessarily touching the toes if you can't touch the toes. Little tiny movements that allow, and done at a slow, controlled pace, working all the way from the head to the feet. That's a good general approach for the average person. Now within that, we all know we all have aches and pains and injuries. So that's where having the person who's qualified to say, maybe this isn't the right one for you, you, or you, but it's great for the other 8 of 10 of you.
That's right.
So that's how I would say.
Yeah. And maybe that is some of the reasons why some workers aren't participating, because they have those specific issues and they are not comfortable talking about it potentially as well, right? So we have to consider that as well, being on the employer side of things, that we can't be enforcing. We can't force people to do things that they're not comfortable with. There could be underlying reasons why they're not participating in a certain activity.
Agreed. And that's where the responsibility of the employer comes in too, because the employer also has a responsibility to keep people safe. Yes. And so that's why we make people wear hard hats. They don't like wearing hard hats. They wear hard hats. You want to wear safety glasses or high-vis vests because they don't look cool. Whatever it is, we do it now because there's been an approach towards it. We don't just give people fall protection and not teach them how to use it. We educate people, we train them, and that's where I think the opportunity lies, is that the likelihood of somebody dropping something on their head is like 1 in 10,000 right now, but 80% of us get bad backs. So
Right.
where is the greatest opportunity employers have to improve their safety performance? Right now it's with the MSIs, because we've done such a great job with the processes, with the PPE. Now we've got a chance to work on something we know is low-hanging fruit, but we're afraid to touch because we're still treating it as an optional thing.
Yeah, you just hit that nail right on the head for sure. Okay, so how long would a typical pre-shift preparation be? What does it look like typically out in industry?
About 5 minutes is all you need. You don't need to do a lot, tops 5 minutes. And, you're spending 30 seconds going from each major body part, from the head down to the feet. That's your 5 minutes. Your goal is to increase the body temperature by about 1 degree, minimal amount, maybe tiny bit of light sweat for people that might not be super conditioned. That's it. You're trying to get the breathing rate up, you're trying to get the blood pumping, because when you warm up and you use these tissues, what you're telling your body is you need to take that blood that's in the core of our body and you need to take it and send it out to active tissues. So what you're doing is you're actually decreasing the viscosity of the blood and the fluids in those muscles. You're warming them up just like you would hydraulic systems, and as a result of that, the muscles are more prepared. But if you just go from, nothing, you don't warm anything up, and then you end up stretching it, well, that's when it's going to snap. And so you want to make it warmer. You're just trying to promote some blood flow and tell your body, hey, there might be something more intense coming, and that could be lifting those crates and doing that hard physical job. So we're going to start off easy and just start to get some blood to those tissues. That's the whole goal.
Okay. Let's just turn back for a moment now to the sedentary type work.
Sure.
What, for a pre-shift preparation for these workers, what would you recommend? Would you still recommend that it be those movement activities, more like the dynamic stretches, or would static be good here, where they probably, likely, people who sit for long periods of time have muscle imbalances? So would there be opportunities here for both static and dynamic? What would be your recommendations for pre-shift preparation, but also then periodically throughout the day in micro breaks?
That's what I was going to say. I think it's not as important for a pre-shift for an office worker as it is throughout the day to combat that sedentary nature. And the difference between a sedentary position and a position that's requiring you to use your body in a variety of tasks, like a tradesperson, is that they are doing a variety of tasks, so they don't have as profound of a muscle imbalance typically, unless they're doing like maybe somebody at a crab plant is doing the same job over and over again. But if you're somebody like a carpenter, you're not going to see those imbalances because you might not be in the same posture for as long. When you're sitting down, this is an opportunity for people to say, this muscle in particular is getting very little action right now, so I'm going to spend extra time on those inactive tissues. So I think about like your piriformis, sciatic pain people get all the time. You can do these static stretch sitting at your desk without anybody knowing you're doing it. You cross your leg over your knee on one and you press down lightly on your knee and you sit up nice and straight, and you can feel that stretch right in the back of your butt, and that's a great stretch you can do. You can do simple wrist stretches by sitting there, while you're listening to a phone call or on a Zoom call. You can bring your arm across your chest and you can stretch out your back. And so I think that periodically throughout the day for sedentary workers more important. Some companies have softwares that do it. Some people have people that go to the office, say, okay guys, let's get up and let's all do it as a fun group, and other people are told to do it individually and they're cued. I think that's the key for a sedentary worker, and then more specific to combat those imbalances we're going to see from holding the same posture for 8 hours a day.
Okay. Jumping over a little bit now, but let's just turn to the physical people for a moment. So if they do a lot of physical work, I just think about in warehousing where there's order picking and activities like that. They do a fair bit of manual labor type work, and then they go on a lunch break for half an hour or an hour. Should those individuals be doing a little bit of a warm up again before they get back to their mid shift?
That's a good point. There's two circumstances I think are really important for workers to make sure that they are attentive to their warm-up. First, especially for places where they live on site. If you're at a camp and you roll out of bed and you have to go straight to work, you can be at work in 5 minutes. You're not woken up. You have sleep inertia. You might not even be cognitively there yet. That's a really important time. So we talk about pre-shift work. What I do for companies, or what we did for companies when I had my company, was that when there's a job in particular, so over a half an hour, if you're working hard all day long, you're probably not going to get too cool. You're going to be a little bit stiffer, but it's not going to be a big deal. But you can actually build stretching and warm up into specific tasks into your job demands analysis or your JSAs. So then if you're going to have a task that you're changing out engines in an engine room, it's going to be super heavy work. Well, you can actually build the warm-up into the requirement of the JSA so that in order to complete the task and follow the JSA, you're now implementing in your safety program. That's a way to be able to mitigate it in those high-risk tasks. And companies can look retroactively and be like, oh, people always hurt themselves unloading the back of a pickup when they're reaching forward to grab a tool out of the back. Before you unload your truck buys with your tools, because we used to see this with line workers, make sure you have to do a stretch. That's part of the job task, right? And so that's how employers can get around it to really mitigate those high risk. And what are you going to say? Well, you're like, well, Bob hurt himself doing this. We don't want to see you have the same fate as this. We're building this in to protect you. You saw what happened. We're going to build it in. And people can't argue with that. And that's a great way to get over that hesitation of feeling goofy. They're like, well, boys, I mean, it's part of the job. I got to do it. So-and-so hurt himself. This is our risk mitigation. I don't like doing it, but we got to do it. And I think that's a really important thing. You got to respect that people feel awkward sometimes doing those physical things. But if it's going to be for a task that's identified as a risk, then there's a logic behind it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So you've already talked about some tactics, that being one of them, to be able to get over some of the hurdles of employees just not participating in these types of routines. Are there any others that you can think of that may have worked just in your past experience, where workers were very resistant or hesitant?
Yeah, I think that finding people that are on board with it to be your little champions becomes important. There's always going to be that person that they know that's one of their peers that's not coming from a supervisor that can lead it to begin with. And you can also make it so that people rotate and they all got to take their turn. You can also let people not participate if they don't want to. And 8 out of 10 are participating. Those other 2 will eventually join in, but give them their space to do it.
And educate them first on why it's so important.
100%. You got to make sure people understand the why more than the what. And then the other thing is leadership buy-in. I could go to the companies and tell you the companies that we worked with and had the best results were the ones where leadership bought in. Leadership engaged in it, leadership promoted it, they believed in it, there was a value placed on it, and that becomes really, really important. And so, if you have that passion yourself, it's the same as any aspect of your business, that will translate. So find leadership that supports it, and then you find ways to respect people and include that in, and also the other thing is the most important thing, can't believe I forgot this, is quantify it. We've had organizations that had 24 soft tissue injuries in a crew of less than 100 people go down to 3 within a couple of years, right? And then when they reduced the program and didn't have support, they went back up to 10. So you need to quantify to show the effectiveness of it and celebrate people that have done well. And doing all those things, that creates a culture around it. The last thing I guess I would say is that most companies have health and safety programs, and stretching, warm-ups, that's all part of health. So all you're doing is you're taking that silent H in health and you're giving a tangible action behind it.
Awesome. Okay, so today we're really focusing on pre-shift preparation and also throughout the shift activities that we can be doing to continue to reduce our risk of MSI. I think we'd be remiss, though, if we didn't bring up the importance of being physically conditioned for your job, right? So these pre-shift preparations and warm-ups, these things are not preparing us for, some of us, for the physical demands that are required of our jobs. So there's obviously different strength and other fitness abilities that would be needed that workers need to be able to meet the demands of their job for, right? So we've got mobility, which tends to be the thing that we focus on pre-shift, but core conditioning, strength of our leg and arm muscles and things, and then also, I guess we have the other side of it where workers whose jobs are very physically demanding, making sure that they're getting sufficient rest as well when they go home. So there's such a broad range of situations that are happening out in workplaces, right? And types of workers.
Yeah, I think that people, well, you would know this, I know this from my background, no one wants to be hurt. No one wants to be hurt. And if your body is your tool to be able to go to work, you got to take care of that. There's a responsibility, just like you would take care of your tools, just like take care of your vehicle. Like, I remember one time, a little story, I ran into a guy and he was telling me his story. A lot of people tell me their stories about health and wellness and how they've succeeded. And he said, I had cancer and I recovered, and I noticed he was eating well. And I was like, that's great for you, man. Good for you. And he's like, yeah, like I was coughing up blood and for like 2 months, and then went to go see the doctor. I was like, 2 months you were coughing up blood? I was like, dude, if you had an oil leak on your driveway from your pickup truck, you would have that thing in a shop in 2 days. So why do we, and I'm glad that he took the action and he's recovered and he was better. But what I mean is that, like, why do we not pay attention to those signals? Why don't we think about ourselves as an investment? Because our body is so critically important to our quality of life. And people think about longevity and the quantity of total years, but it's about the quality within that. And so I think that if people have a physical job, participating in their own physical wellness, whether that be mental health, whether that be physical health, doing things that they like, that maintains their activities of daily living, teaching those lessons to your family and sharing them with your community, these are all really important things. And an investment in your health is something that you never regret. Most people spend their whole life making money so they can spend it all trying to recover their health when they retire. And so that's one of the big things I always did and always emphasize, and I emphasize that with all the radio shows we do and all the TV. Everything is about doing your part wherever you can. And not everybody has the financial means or the time or the opportunity, or they have the ability because maybe they've got challenges physically. But whatever you can do, I would encourage people to do. And if you don't know what to do and you haven't found anything you like, keep on looking, because there's definitely something out there that will resonate with you and will make a difference in your health.
Absolutely. Yeah, try to find something that brings you joy, right? So if it's a walk, it's better than doing nothing. And if you get joy from doing a walk, there's some health benefits in doing a walk. If, try different activities and you're sure to find something. But if you're trying to, if currently you're not involved in physical activity, I think that, and people just don't like to go to the gym, and there's certain things that they just don't like about physical activity. If you can try to connect it to something that does bring you joy, then go with that, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that pretty much covers the questions that I had on this particular topic today. First of all, did you have any further comments or messages that you wanted to bring out of this session that
No, I think
hasn't come
it's
out just yet?
I think it's really nice that you guys are doing an opportunity for employers to listen to something on their way into work or be able to share with their staff about important topics. And I think that being realistic and having a broader perspective on things is really important. So hopefully somebody got something out of this today that they can apply in their workplace, and then we've done our job, I think.
Perfect. All right. So there you have it, folks. If you want to perform at your best and have pain-free movement, then take a couple minutes to get your body or give your body some TLC at the start of your day and throughout your day and throughout your life. And if group routines aren't something that currently exists in your workplace, then perhaps you could start the conversation in your workplace. But if nothing else, maybe start getting your own self into work a few minutes earlier to get your own body ready and to start off on the right foot. After listening to this podcast, if you have questions or you would like further guidance on developing a pre-shift routine, reach out to Workplace NL's Prevention Services Department at safety@workplacenl.ca or 1-800-563-9000. Dr. Wahl, I want to thank you so much for joining me today in this episode on how to prepare your body physically for a pain-free work day. Have a safe day, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Wish you all well.
If you'd like to learn more on this topic, Cheryl will team up again with Dr. Wahl for a presentation at our Learning Symposium titled Preparing for Work, Tips to Avoid Pain and Discomfort on Tuesday, October 24th, 2023. Check out workplacenl.ca for more information.
Thank you for joining us today. Transcripts are available to use in your workplace to increase workers' knowledge in various occupational health and safety topics. Visit workplacenl.ca for more information on the services we provide to workplaces. Feel free to share the signal on social media to improve workplace health and safety everywhere. Thank you, and have a safe and healthy day.